And we are live, I think. Isn't that exciting? So, hello, Blane.
Hello, how are you?
I'm really excited to have this chat with you because we go so far back, and the topic that we're going to talk about is always been in the woohoo kind of place. But for me, the veil, because that's what we're talking about. Beyond the veil, we're going to be talking about people who have left their physicality, the disembodied spirits, our loved ones have departed, however we want to express that. And so I thought I'd like to introduce you to our community and just see what you have to share and how you've come back into my life after so long, and perhaps tell your story. So what is Radical Earth Healing all about, Blane?
So I created Radical Earth Healing. It has the name has a meaning behind it, but I created it. It took a lot of work to step into this fully. But I created it to help people through their grief when they lose a loved one, and reconnect them to their loved ones in a way that is different from everything that's out there already. So that's my main goal of Radical Earth Healing. So it's exciting, it's new, and I thank you for pushing me to get into this.
Hey, come on! I don't push anybody. I pull.
Yeah, you do. But I'd also like to start by saying thank you to yourself, but also thank you to Kim Norton, Rainbow Light Therapies, Ros Tilley, Sacred Eight Creations, and Mina, who has passed on now. But I'd like to thank you all just for everything, all the guidance and the support you've given me throughout my life. So thank you.
So, Blane, you and I first connected when I was running groups, and your mum and dad were coming to my evening groups. And then one day, your mum said, "My 7-year-old son is having a few difficulties, and school don't know what to do with him. But he's just asked if he can come to our groups." And I went, maybe not. But hey, how about you bring him around for a cup of, for a drink, and we'll have a chat. And that's how it all happened. So, do you want to fill us in as to what was going on? Because you were born with a gift, and unfortunately, it was a gift that was really quite was interfering with you living a normal childhood. Yes.
Yeah. So my childhood was very different, which I didn't know at the time. I as you would say, could see beyond the veil, which we call heaven, I guess. So I grew up seeing things that weren't there, and it was such a beautiful thing at times, but it's not so good at other times. And I needed, at that point, some guidance when I was a kid to mainly understand what on earth was going on with me, what I was seeing, what I was experiencing, and a way to control it to some degree to get me through that childhood phase. And I remember that day so clearly, and I can see you, and that has stuck with me for how many years is it now?
Well, you're about 7. How old are you now?
Well, I'm 20 now, so
13 years. 20 in Earth years, but beyond, but way beyond that. Yes. Gosh. And so in that time, because I remember it very clearly too, because I gave you some tools to be able to take control and set boundaries. It was all about setting boundaries because, you were at a place because you were very young and you didn't often know who was actually embodied and who was disembodied. And that was a bit confusing. But I gave you some tools as to take back your life and have boundaries so that you could have a normal childhood, normal, whatever that means. And then we didn't really see each other for a long time.
Yeah.
So, but in that time, you did manage to have a reasonably normal, so-called life. You shelved it, yes?
Yeah. So in that gap of 12 and a half years, there were rocky times. I did some psychic development with Kim Norton, which really, really helped me through the process of high school as well. High school was a really hard time in terms of trying to control all of this, as well as learn 5 days a week. So Kim really helped me through that, protection-wise, developing-wise. Same with Roz. And then I came back because, we lost, we didn't really connect with each other through that whole time. And then I knew I needed to start putting this, stepping into it, and this to become my life and my journey. So thank you again for, you have pushed and pulled. I really feel, and I would not be here right now if we hadn't reconnected.
Well, that's the thing, because souls come to me when they're ready to express, their mission in the physical form. And so you were ready to use the gift in service for humanity. And boy, it's never more important than right now that all of us are coming forward with our gifts and, offering them, because we are going through tumultuous times. And but what I love about you is that you're always willing to learn and willing to open yourself up, but also you're willing to look at using your gift in a radical, although differently spelled, in a radical way. And because it's all about, the holistic picture, the whole picture, rather than just being a specialist in one thing. And that is what I really love about you. You encompass quite a great variety of things in that gift that you have, so that you give people far more than just a message from the dear departed. And I'd like you to, just talk a little bit more about that.
Yep. So one thing I wanted to change or step away from was just being a medium. That's one thing I wanted to change for myself and for others. And I do not have an issue with mediums. That's not what I'm saying. But I feel that sometimes what can happen is, if I sat here and gave you all the messages that they need to say, you can sometimes leave and gain not a lot of comfort. In months' time, you have to come back, and for you to talk to your loved one, you have to keep coming back. And that's not what I wanted. I wanted people to have the power to start to communicate with their own loved ones. So I kind of blended my abilities to create a formula of how other people can start to feel and sense and reconnect with their loved ones on a daily basis.
And do you find then that this happens as a result, I always think there's a certain time of this separation anxiety that we all go through, because one moment we have loved ones that we can hug and touch, and there is a response coming from that physicality, from that form that we have become so attached to and identify with as that is the person. And when suddenly that person leaves the shell, then there is this emptiness. And so that is not only, a shock, particularly with sudden death. It's not just a shock for the people on this end, it's also a shock for the people on the other end. And so what I feel too that you do is you don't just reconnect or restore the bond between, the the disembodied and the embodied, as I call them. So, because I don't believe in death, it's obvious to me because, you know, the body's still there and I'm knocking in there and there's nobody answering. So, you know, what happened? So, you know, the being that was actually living in that life force that was in the body before is still there. It's still there. It's just out of the body.
Yeah.
And we can really connect to that and continue our relationship in a healthy way. And that's the big one, isn't it? In a healthy way, for both sides. For both sides. I think, you know, that's just makes the grieving process so much richer.
Yeah, I think the hardest part about grief is we try to since we lose them physically, we think we've lost them because we can no longer see them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the grief steps in, and the separation anxiety comes from the lack of vision, lack of we cannot see them anymore, so they're not there. But that's where I want to get people to realize that we can communicate in a different way now. We can sense them. We no longer have the sight to physically see them, so let's start to empower the other senses so we can communicate in other ways, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And look, you know, for people who are watching this at the moment, please, you know, send us a comment if you've got a question, because, you know, we have so many questions about death. I think particularly in the West, we just have been so programmed out of seeing death as part of life and embracing it. You know, in the indigenous cultures around the world, death is embraced with celebration, with joy, with all sorts of wonderful ceremony. As we're here in the West, we have been programmed out of that, although more and more people are now retrieving, you know, that moment of celebrating the life that was in that particular role in that particular body. And knowing that life force goes on and has, you know, other things to do, other places to be. So it's ongoing. So, Blane, how are you planning to put this into effect, and how are you putting it into a service?
So I have sessions that I run one-on-one. And we've just started a workshop, so that's exciting. But within the sessions, a lot of the time, people are wanting answers. And I let them know that I do it very differently. But it's a beautiful process of the reconnection. And so within that, we talk. You know, we connect. Well, I connect to who has crossed on, who has transitioned, and we talk about their grief as well, because that's important, how they're dealing with it. We want them to deal with it in a healthy way on both sides. And then I run you through a process of how we can reconnect with them, how we can bring them into our everyday lives, and how we can rebuild a relationship in another form. Also, we include some energy healing work in there as well to recenter and rebalance the body and energy field. I think that's important as well. So it's very different. And it's not something people are used to, but I'm hoping it expands. So it becomes a new way of seeing death, a new way of, I think we need to celebrate it and see the blessings within death. I think that's important.
So I'm just putting in the chat here your Facebook contact. And perhaps if you would like people to have a phone number or a contact phone number, then you can put that in the chat also, which is really important. Yeah, and so you just mentioned the workshop, which we're going to do on the 29th, and which now booked out, I believe, and overbooked, I believe, which is exciting. And so tell me a little bit, because I think that, we've decided this is what's me, doing the pull and push. But it's also looking at how can you best present it to people, and how can you, in what format can you be of greatest service. So yes, it's absolutely the one-on-ones, but I think what we're going to be doing is these small groups that you want to express things in. So can you describe that a little bit? What your intention of that kind of format is?
Yeah, so the workshops, the small groups we'll be having are not much different to one-on-ones, but it's going to be powerful. And I want it to be powerful so that we all learn the tools on how to reconnect with our own loved ones, but we can bounce off each other. We can learn from each other. Everyone will receive messages in different ways. And I think that's the beauty of it, is that we learn from each other. And the only way we're going to grow with messages from non-physical side is through confirmation. Yeah. So
Well,
yeah, I think confirmation is important when we're learning, when we're growing, because without it, we don't know whether we're on the right track or not. So I think that's where the groups come into place. I think they're important for people learning that we can bounce off each other and feel the energy of multiple loved ones around. I think it's a safe space to learn and to grow.
yeah, and I think also it's wonderful that, and I know that with the group work that I've done over the years, is this knowledge that you're not alone.
Yeah.
That there are other people who feel like you, other people who sometimes experience things that are inexplicable, and that now you can actually discuss um, and just openly share. And I think that's going to be really interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that what your aim is? So I want you to just talk a little bit more about, and maybe you can use a case history as to how you use the grief guidance that you do, how you support people to use the restoring of that bond to heal the grief. Maybe you can take us through an example.
So I explained why we have the grief, which is the separation anxiety, because we can't see them. But it all starts that we can start to have a healthy grief process once we realize they're not gone. In society, we act as though when death occurs, they are gone. And that's what needs to change first, is the realization that they're still with us and they're stronger than before. Then from that, we can start to understand what grief is and how we can deal with it in a healthy way. We can use our senses and emotions in a healthy way. And it's all about feeling. It's about actually, I found a quote that the only cure to grief is to grieve. And unfortunately, these days, everything's a Band-Aid, and we're not allowing our bodies to feel the truth. So I think that's step one, is to realize they're not gone, and then feel what we're actually feeling and release that, or do something with that, rather than to hide it or shove it down or ignore it.
Just muted myself. I've just put your phone number in the chat. Would you like me to put that in?
Yeah, that'd be good. Thanks. For some reason, my chat
can't
yeah.
work. Okay, well then I'll put it there for you. So that's the phone number if you want to contact Blane. That would be really nice. And look, because you've got Radical Earth Healing there, people may not really understand your name, so I'm going to put that there too. go. This is the name of the physical being that you are. Yes. You said something earlier about the bond can become even stronger.
Yeah, in a different way.
In a different way, and I think that is very important to recognize. I always say, well, I'm constantly talking to the button, and they can't argue as much as they used to.
Yeah.
Because you have a different relationship. Because once we leave this embodied form, all the issues that you had in it no longer exist. It's like you don't have to go shopping, and you don't have to have a cup of tea, although some people really would love to have a cup of tea still. But I always say, no, you leak, so it's not really advisable. So it's just really looking at death in a much healthier way, in a much more embracing and inclusive way than what we've done in the West. And that's what you're really offering people, where you can have as good a conversation with your loved ones and get a response. That's the one, isn't it? And get a response. And this is what you really want to teach people. So have you got any examples, for instance, not naming any names, of a case that you have been involved in where this has really been very pertinent?
Every person is so different, so it's hard to kind of pick something, but I would say that, let me think of one. Okay, so there's a process I take you through to reconnect, and it kind of reprograms our body and our patterns to understand what they feel like when they're there.
Yeah.
So within that process, I take the person back to when that loved one was alive. And we sit in the feeling and the smell, and we use every sense to feel what it felt like back then.
Yeah.
And what sometimes starts to happen is they step in. So that memory, that visualization will change. And that's when we know their soul has come in and is communicating. And the emotion that kicks in, that's when we know, that is usually what happens. They're the main cases. I've noticed a few people now are seeing colours more than any other sense, which is interesting.
Wow, that's amazing.
I've noticed a few people now are seeing colours more than any other sense, which is interesting.
Wow, that's amazing. So, whoops, what's happening here? I've got feedback, just.
I think you're muted.
I'm muted again. I'm unmuted somewhere else, and I'm muted again. Okay, so I'm going to ask a question that people often, that I see that battle with. In the last few years, one of the things that has occurred in our society with all that has been going on worldwide is the increased number of people that have decided that this life is not for them anymore and that have voluntarily stepped out of it. And with that goes an enormous fear that is being instilled certainly in many of the Western world, and of fear of what happens to their soul, and certainly the certain religions that have condemned these people. And I know that's not true. So I would just like to bring that out into the open and ask you what your experience of that is, and to let people know there is no such thing as judgment day or blaming or whatever on the other side.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
important. It's a good point. There's so many different opinions on this. So, but I think it's important that we go with what we feel from our experience. And from my experience, those that choose to go, it actually can be quite a beautiful process for them. And I know that's hard for some people to comprehend, and some people don't agree with that. But if we think, so there's multiple ways that it can occur, I feel, in terms of when their soul comes in to communicate. If they made the decision to leave this earth physically, sometimes it's a very dense energy. It all depends on why they left, if that makes sense. Some it's a beautiful process because they knew they didn't feel like they belonged here. So it's a bit of a hard one to explain, but they're in some ways actually more okay than us when that happens. We're left behind with questions that aren't answered, and that's why they come to, I guess, a medium for those answers. But a lot of the time, the person that actually made the choice to leave is more okay than the family. And they have more of an understanding of everything. And that's important. Important is the understanding of what that process is.
Yeah. And it's also this understanding that, the biggest wound that then needs healing is this feeling of guilt on this side. And yeah, sorry, and
the feeling that comes up a lot is, I wish I could have helped them.
yeah,
In reality, they did not want help sometimes because help was keeping them in a prison. It's hard to understand sometimes, but sometimes help for someone that does not feel like they belong on earth is a prison for them. So that's why they don't want help.
the other thing too, sometimes I feel that, I've learned that the soul has many exit points.
Yeah.
So, I see that we incarnate for a reason, and when the circumstances prevent that reason for whatever reason, the soul will hang about for a while, but then there comes a time where it's got better things to do, you know, and really decides, look, obviously, I'm not going to be able to expand and to reach my intentions for being in this physical form at this time in this way. So it becomes like time to move out. It's like when you know that you've got to move house. It's like, okay, no, this house is no longer doing it for me. And I'm kind of trying to put it in a way that makes it less emotive. It's when we can just become more aware of the realization that there is an end date to being in this vehicle, and focus far more on being fully alive whilst we're in it, than constantly trying to avoid that end date, which in medicine nowadays is just so much, preserve life against all costs. And that's not what it's about. It's preserve life in a good quality at all cost. But it's this fear that death is bad. And I think this is where you have such a huge role to play too, where you can show people that it's a beautiful process. It's as beautiful a process as birth. Because I've always felt that when we're born, we're actually leaving from somewhere else. It's like a death somewhere else. And when we die, so-called here, we're being reborn into a different form. So it's changing form all the time. and expanding consciousness in whatever form that we move into next.
Mm.
Yes? How does that sit with you?
Yeah, I think we're living a life of fearing death, and that doesn't allow us to live a life. And I think if we lived life fully, we would not fear death. If we had an understanding of that transition, we would not fear death. And
No.
I feel if, how am I trying to explain this? So I've just lost it.
Oh, we all lose it often.
Maybe I'm not meant to say that one.
Maybe not. Maybe not. No. What do you feel that you've seen in, this is a relatively short time, even though you have had this gift from the day you were born. It's only a relatively short time that you've started putting it in service. But what have you seen as an effect with the families that you've worked with so far?
Some people are amazing, and it's that understanding of everything that they really change. They really change they come in and they're suffering. And it's a rocky journey, it always will be in grief. But when they have that understanding and willingness to change their view on death, they walk out with such a positive attitude towards their loved ones. And it's just a feeling that you can't describe.
Yeah, go on.
They start to spread that to other family members and more and more and more, and you start to hear about it. And it's starting to change the way we see death.
Do you also feel that it also then makes people, the grieving people, more conscious and more intentional about living a more full life?
Yeah. I think sometimes even that is done in a negative way, if that makes sense. Because it can be skewed. So a lot of the time in the past, however long we've seen death as a negative thing, once death occurs, it's like this automatic switch of, oh, that happened so young, or, whereas if we see death, that's kind of what we want, is to switch the way we live life. But it should not take death to realize that.
No.
If that makes sense. It should take the understanding of death, but it shouldn't take the actual death itself to occur, if that makes sense.
Yes, but we're in early days of that transition of inner standing, and I do believe that it has been something that, particularly if with near death experiences and people who come back and then realize that they've been squandering a lot of their life with minor issues that really don't matter, and they suddenly realize that the only way to live is to put value in every moment of your life and to not major in minus, as I always say. So but I think that still has a little way to go for us to live with that consciousness all the time. And it's why I'm really mentioning it. It's part of something, once you restore that bond, that people then go back and go, you know what, I'm going to live my life every moment, because it is such a gift.
Definitely.
Really beautiful. Yeah. Well, I'm just enjoying having this chat with you. It's always amazing to me when I, go back to our story and how that's unfolded, and here we are working together, and it's just beautiful. So I just want to tell everyone that to contact you, there is a phone number, and or you go to Radical Earth Healing, a Facebook page, and you have a website now. By that, do you have a website yet? Yeah, but it's in the process. So Facebook at the moment is the way to contact you. And I did put in the chat your phone number. And if it doesn't matter how long or how short your loved one has departed, if there's anything in you that if you feel disconnected or you feel you would like to have greater understanding of death itself, then please contact Blane, because he is a wisdom beyond his physical years, and has just this incredible gift where is able to heal the grieving party on this side, but also to bring through the love from the other side. And it's a rare gift. And I'm just as always, feel honored and privileged to be walking beside you. A little pull and a little push every now and then. But that's usually your soul just going this way, that way, this way, that way. My soul does it all the time. I get pulled and pushed continuously. So now you are situated in Mornington, on the Mornington Peninsula, but I believe you're willing to travel if necessary, yes, to visit people in their home. Did you tell me that, or am I taking that out of context? No?
No, I travel, yeah.
But you have got a beautiful room in Mornington, and we have got this workshop on the 29th, which is fully booked, but we certainly, seeing how that goes, we will do those again. Yes?
Yes, definitely.
Yes, definitely. Fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing your time with me and giving people a bit more of an insight as to who you are, what you do, and what we do is really who we are. And that's what's so beautiful about you. So I hope people will contact you, and I know that you are going to support so many people now and in days to come. And I love you. I think that for me, at my stage of life, to see the youth of today coming up like you is magnificent. And before we finish, there is one topic that we haven't mentioned, and that's the children. So one of the things that I do want to mention here is that because Blane has gone through this himself, and he's not alone, there are children out there that are particularly now are being born sighted, as I call them. So if you have a child at home who is not coping because they're seeing beyond the veil in whatever way, it doesn't have to be the dear departed. Children are now being born where they have not got the veil of forgetfulness. And so any child that you have who talks about their past life, who talks about, granny or whatever, and how I always laugh how we had invisible friends. People had invisible friends. They weren't, if you've got children who have invisible friends and you don't know what to do with them, well, bring them to Blane, because he really wants to work with children and help parents with children like that, and children to navigate this gift, because there are many, many out there who are in that situation. I was just fortunate that Blane and I got together, and so he would like to pass that forward and to support other children like himself, or children, teenagers, whatever. He's here for you. Okay, Blane, thank you so much. Love talking to you, and I love supporting you to finally, after all these years, to see you grow into this beautiful young man, and to really put that gift into service for humanity and see it blossom. So thank you.
Thank you.
Let's chat again.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.